First of all, knife crime is at nightmare proportions. And you can see this recent article from The Telegraph that says exactly that. It said that our current mayor, Sadiq Khan, is criticized for tackling knife crime as the 100th teenager killed during his time as mayor. And here's another headline from the Mail Online, and I'm going to read this one out. And this says, quote, "Blood was pouring out of him. He was screaming, 'Why has this happened to me?' Plumber, who was the first on scene of London's stabbing, reveals agony of one of 4 random victims of a 14-hour knife rampage." This is the thing that happens in our capital city every day. And when I go into the article from The Telegraph, it talks about some of the things that have been happening. And it said 3 weeks ago, another teenager was fatally stabbed during a fight in Maida Vale in West London. Of the teenagers who have been killed in Khan's time in office, 2 were only 14 years old, while 9 of them were 15 and 16-year-olds. And one of our politicians, Ian Duncan Smith, said, "Sadiq Khan is, quote, a man whose irrelevance is only matched by his incompetence when he is called on to make decisions like this." He went on to say that, quote, "He said he would reduce crime only for London to witness an epidemic in gang violence, resulting in the senseless deaths of young people and the growth of a culture of criminality." Another politician chimed in and said, quote, "100 teenagers have died since Sadiq Khan became mayor. That's 100 mums who can no longer hug their children or see them grow up." And went on to say, quote, "This is a shocking trend. Knife crime rose by 38% in the year prior to lockdown. Homicides are at an 11-year high. And Sadiq Khan's response is to defund the police by £110 million. And I'll get into that shortly." And he went on to say, quote, "It's a terrible indictment of Sadiq Khan. Londoners deserve a safer, fair, and more affordable city. If Sadiq Khan won't deliver, then he should step aside for someone who can." Let's look into the numbers because they say everything. And again, I am a big fan of the numbers and the statistics and the science. If you can prove it by the numbers, then it's true. Everything else is opinion and conjecture. And let's look at these numbers. And you can see from this graph on screen the number of knife crimes recorded in London from 2010 to 2020. And if you look at this bar chart, you can see as we go from 2011 to 12 to 13 to 14 to 15, knife crime is going down from 14,000 cases to 11,000 cases, down to 10,000 cases, down to less than 10,000 cases. And right around when our current mayor is elected, you see them jump to 12,000 cases, 14,000 cases, and this year now topping over 15,000 knife crime cases in this city. There it is, in black and white. The numbers don't lie. And this report goes on to say, quote, "It is undeniable that the cuts in both police funding and officer numbers are important factors." But the problem with this is that it's not just numbers. These are real human beings. They're actually teenagers that are dying in our streets every single week. And I want to show some of their names. So this is an article that was published in The Sun this year, and it goes on to say, "Lawless London, London stabbings, the latest news on knife crime, attacks, and statistics." And I want to talk to you about some of the victims because these are real people. These are children that belong to families. They have mothers, they have fathers. On January 27th this year, Lewis Johnson, who was 16 years old, was stabbed in front of shocked commuters during evening rush hour at East Croydon Station in southeast London. Less than 2 weeks later, on February 5th, a 19-year-old boy was stabbed in a knife fight on Kingsley Road in Hounslow in West London. Met Police confirmed a man in his early 20s and a 15-year-old boy were arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. Teenage on teenage violence. It's unacceptable. On the same day, February 5th, a horrified dock walker discovered 15-year-old Babakar Diagni stabbed to death on grassland in Coventry. And on February 5th, the 16-year-old victim was rushed to hospital after being stabbed in broad daylight in Upmarket Highgates. Those are 3 teenage stabbing deaths in the same day on February 5th of this year. And the article goes on to say this, quote, "London's knife crime explosion has fueled the capital's highest murder rate in more than a decade." It goes on to say, quote, 10 people on average are caught with blades every day in the streets of London. Every day, 10 people are caught with blades. How many more are carrying them? And politician Rakia Ismail, who was formerly of the Labour Party, the same party of the current mayor of London, accused our current mayor of, quote, failing to take action against knife crime, which she said has risen to, quote, by, quote, 34% since he took office in 2016. Our current mayor's own members of his party are calling him up on his poor performance on knife crime. This is a real topic, and these are real teenagers dying in the streets. And you can't point the finger when teenagers are killing teenagers. You have to look at what the society is doing. How are we failing these young kids when they are killing each other with knives right in front of us on the streets of our city that we love? It's unacceptable. And we have to think about what our leaders are doing, what our police officers are doing, what are our policies, and what are our priorities. And that's why, as your next mayor of London, this is going to be very high on my list as one of the first things I do on May 7th.